All right. Good morning and welcome to the Acer Team Story Cup Season 3. Axiom Esports versus mYinsanity. Today we have the score once again displayed here in the top right. It's a best of 9 between these two teams, but a best of 1 between these two players. And without further ado, spawning in the lower left, playing for Axiom. Completely denying my introduction. It's gonna be Red Darren player Ryung.
Okay, I guess we're stuck here, so
Yeah,
I won't introduce the other player yet.
Yeah, actually, this could be a problem. We've talked about this a little bit in the past, and I'm not calling the Axiom players winners. Don't get me wrong, guys. I don't want you to misunderstand this. But I think it was the entirety of Season 2, Axiom, specifically, like Alicia as well, they felt the lag. I mean, playing from Korea to North America, there's some people who say, like, it's basically no lag, but it's the middle ground between Europe, where Stardust is currently stationed. But it feels like the Axiom players are always the ones who have the trouble with it. They're always the ones asking for less casters and things. I hope that's not the issue. I really hope there's not some one scumbag caster legging the game out, because, of course, we want the best match possible out of these two.
Well, usually if, they're the only one lagging, that's them. But you're right, and the fact that Stardust is from Europe, usually he would be the one complaining a little bit, but I guess it also depends where in Korea you are.
It kind of sounds like you got punched in the gut. Like, complaining! A little bit. Like, I'm sorry.
I was, like, clearing my throat at the same time. How weird. Alright, well, we're back into the game. So, in the upper right, as the blue Protoss, it is mYinsanity's Stardust.
I'm a little bit surprised they started with Stardust, to be honest. Well, I guess no. Let me rephrase this. There's a little bit of strategy, first off, to explain for these Team Story Cup guys. The first picks are always blind picks. You don't know who Axiom's sending out. You don't know who mYinsanity is going to send out. Because of this, you kind of have to, like, gauge heavily. Do you burn one of your good players right away on the off chance he possibly loses? Like, let's say Impact comes out and Impact's PVZ is God mode and Stardust doesn't stand a chance. All of a sudden, you've burned Stardust for what is essentially nothing. Alternatively, by opening with a stronger player like Stardust, you run the risk of, or the chance of actually taking a few games early. And it's never bad to start a series with a 2-0 or 3-0. But, I don't know, as far as being surprised that they came out, I was kind of, I don't know, unlike Axiom, like, I'd say, when I think of Axiom, I kind of rate their players on the same level of, like, good, right? There's no player on that team that I would call bad. And I wouldn't say the same for mYinsanity, but there are players who are less good than Joxy and Stardust. And I kind of would have expected one of them to be burned, quote-unquote, for that first match, but
I feel like mYinsanity has set a precedent of sending out their lower tier players first, and I always assumed that was because they, they liked saving their heavy hitters for later, but also to give their, the other guys actually a chance to play in the league, like, honestly. So, like, Stardust isn't always 5-0ing or whatever you hope he does.
Well, that's, that's actually a good point, though, because I've talked with Penguin about this before. Penguin, of course, he cast with us in the past, guys. He's a fun guy, and he's also captain of the team. And he said specifically, like, one of the biggest things they were stoked about for getting in the Acer Team Story Cup is this is a lot of exposure, and that kind of relates back to what Zombie Grip said about, like, the lesser-known players. First blood. I hesitate to call Kane a lesser-known player. I mean, he won Shoutcraft America. He's a pretty talented Zerg player, but in comparison to players like Joxy, it's kind of like, who's Kane, right? So even if it's someone like Kane, whether it's A-Bomb or whoever, it is kind of one thing to consider. But versus Axiom, I guess it's kind of one of those situations too where it's a good team to start with. You can't really risk the reward versus exposure.
I guess so. But doesn't Acer Team Story Cup also have the revive rule for an ace?
They do. So for those who don't know how this works, real quick to explain, you can't revive a player in the middle of the series, but on your last life, when you're like 0-4, you can bring back a player that's already played.
Okay, that's what I thought. So that's also, something, because Stardust might be their guy who's like first and also ace. Things go badly, which is, I mean, that kind of, I guess it's kind of a good strategy, like kind of like bookends the game. But we got a Reaper in. I didn't actually see the tech of Stardust, so unfortunately Ryung can't, like, say, oh, I'm perfectly fine, or oh god, I gotta work for a blink all in. He's still kind of a little paranoid. He goes back in, though. This time he should see the Robo and the Forge, so that's 100% casual, or not casual, but, like, safe for Ryung. There you go.
Oh, he's gonna lose the Reaper, I think. Let's see. Darts away. I was gonna say, though, yeah, you're right. Keeping this Reaper alive is key. The problem a lot of Terrans have It's not that Protoss units innately are OP. It's trying to guess what they're doing becomes incredibly difficult, and you do need the exact right composition to beat them.
This is weird. We have Ryung going for a Marauder slow first. Now, sometimes if they know it's a blink all in, some people do try and get Marauder slow first, just so they can slow a Stalker, get him, punch him out. But this is for an attack. You know, he obviously scouted, and I think he's just been preparing for this before. It'll be interesting to see what actually happens. I guess his hope is that the 2 Stalkers will be out somewhere beyond the cannon range, so he can get, you know, 2 free Stalkers. But I mean, Stardust is playing pretty close to the natural.
Yeah, and the Observer's seen the army poking out here. At the same rate, though, this could just be that sort of awkward first force to overcharge back away type move. The danger, well, I mean, the biggest danger in this is like the fear of an Oracle coming, right? But that Reaper, because he scouted, there was no Stargate. This is why he's comfortable doing this, but pushes past the natural, burns the overcharge on the Reaper, and now he's got actually a lot of units in the main to deal with it. Without concussive shell, Stalkers cannot get away.
Yeah, I don't think he's got. Pretty nice.
He doesn't really have a lot of killing power, though. It's kind of a concern.
Well, honestly, usually you don't see a lot of Stalkers out in the beginning. Like, they're trying to be as greedy as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, maybe that's why Ryung didn't do as much damage as he thought. But still, like, 2 Stalkers trading off for that plus a cannon. I don't think it's actually that bad. Actually, 3 Stalkers. So there you go. But
resources last pretty even.
Yeah. So I mean, that wasn't that bad. It was surprising more than anything else. Just that, you know, usually you have a task force like that, but you're getting stim the entire time. You're still getting Marauder slow last, but that worked out fairly well, I guess. I want to say like he got something else from it, like he got scouting or something, but I don't think he did.
Well, you know, actually, taking a couple of Stalkers out, let's assume for a second, like, rewind, fast forward, whatever you want to call it. If this had been a Blink Stalker all in, and it looks like he's going to go for Blink, by peeling off even like 3 or 4 Stalkers early on, that really does take a lot of power away from the Blink. Because how many times is it you watch, after the SCV pulls, after the Marauders and Marines have all died, there's only like 5 Stalkers left, but that's 5 Stalkers too many. If all of a sudden it's 1 or 2, then there's a much larger chance you actually hold that attack. But, whoa, I was talking about the Blink coming, again, not in reference to the all-in, but we've also got the Colossus coming up, and several more gateways being thrown down at the same time. Ryung has got to prepare for this. This third base, it's a cute move, but it's a liability.
It's a cute move. It's actually kind of a fast third base, but yeah, it's going to be a problem. We actually saw in Go for StarCraft, Stardust was bringing out this exact same thing against MMA, 2-base Colossus all in. He would either go, actually, I think both times he didn't even go immediately. Even in the third game where he was so far ahead, he waited until he had charge. But since you're so used to like preparing against Colossus all in as is, like without charge or without them teching up even more, you kind of like mess up in the fact that you prepare too much too soon, and then he beats you with charge lots, actually, more so than the Colossus. And that's probably what he's going to do here, too. I mean, yeah, he'll get Blink, but shortly after charge.
We're going to look at a move out a little bit. The nice thing about these earlier timings is, you know, Thermal Lance isn't done if you have to get into a fight. I'm not saying you should or want to, but if you do, you can at least contend with the Colossus. But for Ryung, he's got a Warp Prism on this side of the map to worry about. The Marine does scout it, and looks like that's actually going to be enough to deter Stardust for the moment. But that's also going to bring Ryung home, which is probably a lot better move than moving across the map. No amount of small aggression he could push right now, or push with right now, would really be worth it, I feel.
It would be really risky. On one hand, you want to get the scout and see that he has so many Colossus and see that maybe you should be worried. You know, he's not getting a third, he's doing it all in. But yeah, on the other hand, if you can't pick up or if they blink on your medevacs, then suddenly that's a sign for them to move in.
So he hasn't confirmed the Colossus until just now with that Marine, but he already had Vikings in production, so Ryung kind of playing a little bit blind with the situation, but making the right moves nonetheless.
I'm still really worried. Yeah.
Oh wow, picked off that Warp Prism in the main, missile turret plus those Marines and the Vikings in the right place at the right time. Without that to worry about, without those 4 Zealots unloading and killing the entire main mineral line, Ryung can actually focus on this attack, and that makes this a lot more easier to hold. His army supply is enough. He's got some Vikings in the air. I think he can take this from Stardust, this initial fight at least. Not until Stardust gets some more units here.
I think he can as well, but the whole thing about Stardust's attack is that he usually doesn't attack. And Ryung feels way too paranoid with, you know, sentries on the field to attack into him, and then Stardust waits for charge. This is exactly what he was doing against MMA so far. Actually, he added a Warp Prism, but since that didn't do anything, let's pretend it didn't happen, I suppose.
Charge is so dirty, too. It's so hard to deal with Zealots as is. Gonna pick up a Viking right away here. They're not quite getting to engage on the Marauders. SCVs are pulled on top of this. The boys have been called, so to speak. And is this gonna be enough? For Ryung, he's gonna take some losses for sure. SCVs are chasing up past the Marauders, but the Marauders still on top of the Colossus, trying to focus this down, but the damage is a little too good, and the Zealots are too much of a buffer.
A little overextension right there.
But even with all these SCVs lost, 32 dead, he's still got a pretty healthy count. 41 plus mules. But he's going to keep this on the front lines. He's going to keep engaging into this. That Colossus, well, finally goes down, but there's still so many Zealots to deal with is the problem.
Yeah, he just... Gosh, I don't know how you're supposed to beat this. Stardust keeps attacking at the right moment. He attacks at the right moment against MMA by waiting for a very long time. And here...
Oh, Simpson top the Colossus. If he gets the Colossus, he can fight the... Yeah, he can fight the Stalkers to the Marauders. Still has to run away from the freaking Zealots. But... Vikings on the front lines probably need to land to add just a little bit to this. It's pretty close as far as these front lines go. Look at that army supply even out pretty quickly, but
well, the charge is finished though.
Even then, it's going to be hard to deal with this. There's still some sentries, but GG is going to be called. So close to holding that engagement. But again, congratulations at that same note to Stardust. Quick 1-0, well not quick, but a nice 1-0 for his team to start the day.